Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to Musty Audio again. I, as ever, am one of your hosts, Lee Stevens. We had a guest in. We had Rich Northwood, who's been a friend of the Alien Addict podcast, if you've watched any of those. Turns out, I didn't realize this until like the week before we did this show. He did the Monroe Institute thing. Like he went off to the Monroe Institute, did the whole gateway tapes things, if you guys know what those are. And he came on the show, and he decided to tell us about it, and it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I'm battling at the minute with my son because he won't go to bed, so I've told him he can open this as something to do. So Arthur, take it away.
Welcome everybody to the show.
We're not going to say anything. We're just going to stay quiet now for the next hour and a half. Rich is going to tell us all about his experience at the Monroe Institute. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I've done a tiny bit of homework. I've watched a couple of documentaries because that's where knowledge is, and knowledge that's in books isn't for me. And that's probably more preparation than I usually do for podcasts. I've been using the gateway tapes for quite some time. Dave, you sent them to me first, didn't you? You told me I hadn't heard about any of this until Dave pointed them out to me. And then Rich, you sent me a different link with ones which were higher quality, and it's really interesting that, because I know we were talking about sound compression, and it was definitely different, but I've also noticed that those have been pulled from YouTube, the ones I was listening to that you sent. Mm-hmm. Which I found them really, considering the ones that I've been listening to for ages are still there. I find it weird that the ones that were higher quality have been pulled. So yeah, right. So it's not me talking about me for fucking ages. I'll talk about, because I had a weird thing that happened last week or the week before when I was listening to them. Visual jokes don't work on an audio podcast.
I'm supposed to say
I'll talk about that in a bit. But how did you get switched on to the Monroe Institute?
Well, this is a very long and strange tale, so I will start back. It's okay.
We've got a 2-part podcast to fill.
Cool. So the first part of it was when I must have been about 6 or 7, somewhere around that age. And I started getting sort of spontaneous out-of-body experiences. And this would happen typically when I was on my way to sleep, and again, that borderline sleep stage. And I'd just find myself hovering above the bed, and I would either hover along the ceiling, through the door, down the stairs, and try and watch television over my parents' shoulders. Or I would float.
That's a dangerous game.
Yeah. or I would float out of the window and fly around the garden. Never outside the garden, because I knew I wasn't allowed outside the garden, and I was a bit of a goody kid. And there were 3 cherry blossom trees at the bottom of the garden, absolutely beautiful, quite large, amazing looking in spring. And so after doing that for a good couple of weeks or so, I then went to my dad and I said, look, what is happening? I'm getting these experiences where I'm separating from my body and flying around. And he said, oh, that's just a dream. So the following night, I tried it again. And as I was hovering out of the window and into the back garden, I realized I could still feel the bed under me, while this was happening. And I thought to myself, oh, it is just a dream. And I stopped doing it, because my curiosity was sated. I'd got an explanation, and that was it. So fast forward now to the age of 28, 29, 20. Anyway, I had taken up Tai Chi, and I'd been practicing for a long time. And my teacher said, "Would you like to go to China to train with some of the top people?" And I said, "Brilliant." So I saved up and went, and we got into Beijing, and we went to a place called the White Cloud Temple. And the White Cloud Temple is a Taoist temple. We usually hear about the Buddhist monks in China, the guys that do all the what they call the kung fu, the fighting monks. Well, there are another load of monks who are Taoist, and they have their own system that they call Wudan, based on the mountain where it's from, Wudan Mountain. But they have a place in Beijing, as I say, called the White Cloud Temple. So I went there, and while I was walking around the White Cloud Temple, I noticed there was some tapestries up in one of the buildings. And I looked at the tapestries, and there was one of them of a bloke lying as though he was lying down, but he was hovering above a load of cherry blossom trees, or at least it looked like that from the perspective of the of where I was looking. And it immediately brought me straight back to my experiences as a child, flying around the back garden with the cherry blossom trees. So I went to my Tai Chi teacher, Li Ming, and I said, what do you know about out-of-body experiences and martial arts and stuff like that? And he said, oh yeah, it's a useful thing that some of the older guys used to do. And he said what the tradition was if you wanted to do this, to go out of body and explore, you would lock yourself in a room, and you would put your highest level student at the door, and you instructed that student that if anybody tried to wake you, they were to kill them, because they believed that if you were woken up while you were still separated from your body, that you would never be able to get back, and you would die. So there was a lot of folklore around it, and I didn't ask any more about it, but I then started to research it, and I found the Monroe Institute, and I delved into the books by Robert Monroe. So Robert Monroe was a TV producer. He made his money in television, and like me, only at a much older age, started having spontaneous out-of-body experiences. And like me, he was curious, but he didn't have his dad to ask him. He went and collared a load of medical people and science people, and because he was rich, he got a lab together, and they started doing tests, and they plugged people into EEG systems, and they experimented with different ways of getting to the state that he was in when he was doing an out-of-body experience. And they tried all kinds of things, like sticking your head in between huge magnets and stuff like that. But what they found was that there was a technology that they called binaural sound, and this was where a vibration of a certain number of hertz is played into one ear, and then a different vibration is played into the other ear. And because your brain tries to join the two up, the difference between one and the other is the wavelength that your brain waves try to match to. And so they experimented that they could get what they would call entrainment, and that is that you could play a certain frequency and your brain waves would match those frequencies. So what they then did was they started off with waking state, and they moved people away from the waking state. And wherever they noticed a change in either someone's experience or in their EEG or in their body temperature or anything like that, they counted it as a point and they gave them focus levels. So you went from focus 1, which was normal awake, to focus 3, then 10, then 11, 12, and they were all numbered. And so they then built what they call the gateway experience, or the gateway voyage, depending on what you were doing. It's the gateway voyage if you were signing up to their course and going there. And the experience, I think, was the actual tapes that you could buy at the time. And they set up a place called the Nancy Penn Center in the Monroe Institute. So if you ever go out to Virginia, a place called Faber, Virginia, they have a big center where you can go and experience the set of exercises. And so their preliminary course is the Gateway course, and it lasts about a week. And a lot of people, it has a lot of sign-ups for it, and they have lots of other courses, some to do with remote viewing, some to do with things like spoon bending and healing, and another one which is guidelines, where you communicate with your spiritual advisors. And then you've got star lines, where you work on trying to communicate to extraterrestrials. So this would be, I suppose, the equivalent of Greer's CE5. So they have a very, very broad curriculum of consciousness that you can access and learn from. So I started off by doing the CDs from home, and then I reached out to them, and they then came back to me very quickly when they found out that I was teaching Tai Chi, and they were very interested in that. Getting my experiences, because I'd done meditation in the traditional sense, and also, so I had a foot in the traditional and in the high tech. And they said, "Would you like to come over to the Monroe Institute for nothing? And while you're there, you can we can talk about doing what they call setting up the local chapter network." So I went over there to help them set up their chapter network, which is basically a set of people in whatever cities all over America and in places throughout the world, where people can get together and experience the CDs together. So I went over and did that, and while we were doing that, we did some remote viewing sessions. The remote viewing session that I did was about just envisaging the future. So what they did was they asked that we got into focus 12, which is the heightened awareness, expanded awareness. And they said, "Would you look into the future 1 year and have a look at what you see?" Then they said, "Look into the future 2 years and have a look at what you see." And then look into the future, I don't know whether it was 3 or it was 4, but it was, I think, well, let's say it's 4 now, but I looked into the future for 4. So when I looked into the first one for a year, it was
just
sorry, go on.
When you when they're giving you the orders for where to look,
Mm-hmm.
What's the how's best to put this? Like, what sort of mechanisms do you use to do it? Is it a case of because you put into a heightened state, Are you just imagining and then saying what you imagine, or is there something different to it?
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Coffee went down the wrong way. Just give me a second. Okay. So what they do basically is they guide you into the focus level that allows you to experience what you want, and then they'll call you. Remote viewing is about getting a target. So, sometimes they won't tell you what the target is precisely. They might just say, "I've got an object in my hand. Can you tell us what it is?" Or "I've written something down on a piece of paper. Can you tell what it is?" Other times they might say, "Okay, I want you to look, at a certain object in a certain place, and you have to go and look." Or it might be that you need to go to a certain place and a certain time. You don't necessarily need to go there to experience it. All you do is you focus on what they are actually saying, and you follow the target like that. Some people actually decide that they're going there, so they might try and instigate an out-of-body experience and then go there. What the Monroe Institute believe is that your mind is capable of getting information from other areas, and that some people need the experience of an out-of-body to go and get that information, when in fact it's already accessible to you where you are, but you need the illusion of that happening to know that you're getting that information. That's why they say very candidly that although everybody's attracted to the idea of an out-of-body experience and it's the goal for you to do it, doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually going to achieve it. But what will happen is generally something meaningful for you. Anyway, I've digressed. You get given a target and you do that. So just to wind out and give you more practical information about how that happens, what they have is what's called a check unit. And the check unit is basically a bed with walls around it and a small opening where you can get in, and it's got a curtain that you can close behind you. So you're fairly isolated, and you're in the bed and you're wearing headphones, kind of like the ones that I've got. And there's a microphone in there so you can talk to them. And then they have a separate room where they play the tapes. And they were tapes at the time. They were actual physical tapes. And I've got a fascinating story about that in a bit. But anyway, so there's always a controller there. And they're almost like a DJ. So everybody's sat in their own check unit. They're either lying or they're sitting or however they feel comfortable to have this experience. And they put the headphones on and someone will start talking and they will say, "Okay, is everybody ready?" So you'll press a button on the side that will give them a light to say that everybody's ready and set up. And then they'll start by playing you a tape or a DVD as it is now. And you would then be instructed by the tape to go into the right focus level. Now, for us, it was focus level 12 that we were going into. And then they would ask you to remote view your target. So, as I say, for me, one was a year, and another one was 2 years, and another one was 4 years, I think, of as a few years in the future. And the 1 year was I saw a warship sinking, and then there was another 2 year. There was another one that was 2 years in the future, which was and I saw. Well, I didn't see as much as I experienced this rushing towards me of something that I just could not stop. I could not hold on to, and I was going to be sort of blasted away. And that was the. So the first one was, I think it was a Korean boat had got sunk, a South Korean boat that was sunk by, they believe it was a North Korean, either a submarine or something like that, but it was torpedoed. They lost all the people on it. And then there was another one where there was the Japanese tsunami that triggered the Fukushima disaster as well. So that was what we called 2 hits. When I tried to look further into the future, though, I couldn't see anything, so that was a bit of a blank. So I came out of there, and this is the thing. This is the weird thing about remote viewing. I've tried remote viewing since, and I haven't really got anything as big or as meaningful as that. There's a lot of junk, and it's next to useless. It really is, and really, for me, what use was it for me knowing those 2 events? There's no way I could have affected them or changed them. And there was only one way that I could find out that they were real, and that's to wait for them to happen.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's useless.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the bottom line, yeah.
Was it you that realised the events had happened, or did they get back in touch with you and
Yeah, I had to realise that. They didn't get back in touch with me and say that they were hits or anything like that.
So they've never got back in touch with anything that you... No.
And I got a little bit funny about a few things that I heard a bit later on about them that made me a little bit, I suppose suspicious is the wrong word, but so going back to the discussion on the when I said about the tapes, what they did was they decided they were going to master them onto DVD. So they went and took the tapes that they had been using for 10, 15, 20 years, in the Nancy Penn Center, and they analyzed them. And what they found was that the tapes had been used so often that they'd become stretched in places, and they were actually not a consistent frequency that they intended them to be, yet people were still having meaningful experiences with them. And so that's why they were remastered, and that's why there's some old ones that are based on the old tapes that I don't think are as good as the modern ones. And there are some traditionalists who sit there and say, oh, there's something special about these old tapes, and it's one of those, is it really, or is this just wish fulfillment, or are people, having experiences just because they're going through the process of it,
Who thinks up the frequency? Who kind of goes, you know what, this will work, this will put them into this state?
Yeah. So they did a lot of tests, and what they did was, as I said, they took people through frequencies, and where they found somebody reported that they were in a particular state, they would mark that with a number, and that's why you have focus 10, focus 12, focus 15, focus 21. Those are the key ones where people started feeling or experiencing different things. There are also other positions where they noticed changes in body temperature or the brain EEGs. So they mapped those as well, and that's why there's a lot of arbitrary numbers. I think they go up to 47 eventually, but you don't get all of those straight off. You have to go through the process, and that's where you get into this gatekeeping thing, where you have to pay a certain amount, you've got to do a certain amount of courses. It's almost like Scientology in terms of getting clear and things like that. Now, you can find all of the important ones on YouTube or on various sort of places like that. So it's not, I don't think it's the same as Scientology, and there's certainly not exploitative in terms of what they provide. They're almost like it's like hiring a car. You go there and you say, I want to hire a car, and you can take the car where you want, and what you choose to do in it's fine. You take it back, you give them the car back, and you walk away, and you've had an experience. And it's exactly the same thing. They do imply certain things. They imply that in certain states you're going to experience something, and it's just a question of, firstly, whether you believe it. Secondly, you don't necessarily have to completely, but it's what you get out of it, and I think there's an enormous value in exploring your own consciousness, as long as you don't get hung up with expecting certain things, and things happen for you. So I'm keen on knowing what your experience was, Lee, because you said that you were going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't exciting, like massively exciting, but it was odd. When I first started listening to the first lots of tapes, it was a Saturday afternoon. One thing I found really weird was because I listened to, I had a lazy day, and I must have gone through like the first 5, I think, one after another.
Oh, right, okay.
And but what I was finding, I'm not going to say go to sleep, but I kind of passed out at the same point of each one of them, but I'd wake up as well when it was finished. It was very like, because if you say, well, each one is about half an hour, isn't it? Half an hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was a very regimented, like, I'd start listening. You'd have the sort of wave noise, and then that sort of it's like the humming sort of chanting sort of side of it, and then at some point during that, at some point during that, I'd drift off, and then I'd wake up again when it was finished. And like I said, that was regimented for each one I listened to. I still listen to them quite a lot at night time. But what I noticed was when you sent me the link to what I would now listen to what you were saying before, I take it as the remastered one.
Yeah.
Was I listened to I think it was 12, because I think it was like the higher consciousness one.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up, but it was when I woke up, before I woke up, it was like white. Like white, not. It's hard to say, because I don't just mean like when you close your eyes and you just see white. When you're like when there's light in front of you, it felt bright. It was like a bright white, and then that sort of shocked me, and that woke me up. And then, I was thinking to myself then, well, that was weird. That's not happened before with this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But the 3 things I have. Well, sorry. The first thing I should say is, when I was younger, I would have been like 4 or 5, at that sort of age. I had the same thing that Monroe talked about on his journey to find these things, where I never had any out of body experience stuff, but I would have the thing where I would feel incredibly small in my bed, and everything around me would feel like gigantic, like a reverse claustrophobia almost, where just everything felt gigantic. So that resonated with me. But yeah, 3 things I found give me this sensation. Taking hallucinogens gave me that sort of rush of speed where you feel like you broke through something. Mm-hmm. The meditation, when you get thrown out of it, as in, you feel like you have just crashed down again, and it's a shock. You go, fuck, right, okay, that's strange. And oddly enough, the fever dreams over 2 nights when I had COVID, those 3 things all felt very fucking similar.
Right. Yeah,
and that's kind of what I got as well from passing it in and out with the gateway things. I'm going to keep listening to them as well. I think it's really interesting.
It is. It's super. So the first thing I would say is that you experience what a lot of people do, and that's what they call clicking out, and that's the point where what they actually say is that you don't necessarily go to sleep. You just lose consciousness. It's not the same as going to sleep. It's almost and they call it clicking out. So what I would suggest you try doing is doing one or two things. Obviously, prop yourself up slightly a little. If you're lying flat, sometimes you've gone to sleep.
Yeah.
That's not the case. So prop your head and shoulders up a little bit. If that doesn't work for you, try and put your unconsciousness, give it something to go into your energy conversion box. So if you can give it something, let's say a blindfold or something like that you can take off, or something that symbolizes you clicking out, maybe it's a feeling or an experience or something. If you can give it an image or something, so when you're doing your energy conversion box and you're putting out the things that distract you,
might be a good time to explain what the energy conversion box is.
Yeah. Okay. So the energy conversion box is one of the processes that you go through when you go into any CD that the Monroe Institute do. So what they do is they start off with relaxation, and then they say you're on a beach, and they say you should have a box with a heavy lid on it, and what you do is they give you a few minutes to put into that box anything that's going to distract you, and then you close the heavy lid and you turn away from it, and it's a symbolization of you putting away any troubles that you've got, anything that annoys you, that kind of thing. For me, one of the things that stopped me for a long time was I used to get itchy around my nostrils all the time for some strange reason. And that used to drive me mad. And I used to put my nose in the energy conversion box, so you use that to symbolize getting rid of things that are going to get in your way. Some people might put their ego in there if they're the type of person that craves a grand experience, all
the
of these
wife.
things, yeah. I've put all kinds of things in mine when I've done it, and it's all helpful. It is, So use your energy conversion box for that. It might help. And what else? Yes, fever dreams, things like that. These are all sort of changes in altered state, definitely. And they all have a place. I mean, people take all kinds of drugs. Ayahuasca is the big one at the moment, isn't it? That I've never taken anything like that. For a particular experience, I've always used binaural things because I find them the most interesting for me. But I don't necessarily need to use them anymore because I'm that used to them. I can sit and just zone in and zone out to them.
I tried it, and you sent me it, Rich, and my wife listened to the tapes, and I never got a chance to. Well, I kind of forgot about it, and then when I was in hospital, Dave sent me the tapes again on SoundCloud, and I didn't have access to what you sent me, the download, so I listened to them because I thought I'm really stressed out here. I just wanted to get home, but I was very stressed because I can't stand hospitals. They just drive me potty. with anxiety. So I tried this tape out, and I experienced something. I don't know what it was, but the room, like when my eyes were shut, like you explained, a light of white. What I saw is the room went purple, bright purple. I saw purple. I can remember just seeing purple, and having little flickers within the purple of imagery that I couldn't make out what it was. You know, like when you look at the sun and then you close your eyes and you see bits, dots on, and you think, "Oh, I can't get rid of that." Or if you've been looking at a screen, I hadn't been looking at anything. The room was quite dimmed out. I had my curtains round. I saw purple, and there was things like moving, like it's almost like, I don't know, like I was on drugs or something. There's like things moving within this purple.
Well, I mean,
Weird.
I'd argue it is like what it is to take drugs, because what you're doing is you're experiencing some sort of symptom that's either a lesser or different result for what you would get if you had taken drugs.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'll be honest with you, it did calm me down. It chilled me out. But like this, the same when you're speaking about fevers. So I can remember having dreams like you, Rich, when I was a kid, going downstairs, watching American Werewolf in London. My mum and dad didn't let me watch that, but I remember watching it. I remember hovering down the stairs. I can remember watching that film and being scared to death and like buggering off back upstairs. But I had this thing a lot when I was a kid. I can remember one when I had a fever though. Now you guys, you just been speaking about fevers. I had a fever once. I was terribly ill as a child, and I don't know what was wrong. I think it was just like a really bad flu or something. And maybe I had the measles. I don't know. But I remember waking up in the middle of the night and looking around the room, and there was like these little tiny red dots everywhere, that like little tiny spiders just all over the room. Like, and I can remember one of them actually hit me in the eye, and I felt it.
Wow.
Whether it was a dream or not, but it didn't feel like a dream.
I remember being sick when I was a kid, and I must have been proper sick as well, because I was back in the days when not only could you get doctor's appointments, if you were really, really sick, they'd come to your house and make sure you're okay. And and my mum and dad phoned the doctor to come and check up on me. And I can still remember like lying on the couch even if I go into my dad's house, it's a different couch, but the couch is still in the same place. I was lying on the couch with a duvet over me, and I saw a clown running in circles around the room. Now, it wasn't just him, but the doctor was knelt down at the couch speaking to me. My dad was stood over in the stairs that go down to the kitchen. My mum was at the door where you come into the living room from the like tiny little porch before you come in from the front door. And I remember I didn't like him. Definitely didn't like him. But it was only there's been a couple of things which I've experienced over the years, which jived when I ended up listening to, reading the Spirit Molecule. And and what the various people had experienced on those trips, and especially when they meeting these sort of trickster entities like that look like jesters. And then it sort of really hit me there when you look at the depiction of like the jester and clowns and things things of that nature. No one ever thinks for a second, how did we come up with that? Like the idea of a jester. Wait, I'm a fan of comedy. I get the idea of why you would like somebody in the room which is good at making you laugh. But that particular way, like the Harlequin type Luke, that's a strange fucking thing to just
find
shit
funny.
out of no, to just shit out of nowhere.
Mm.
And it made me think. Well, I wonder if what I was seeing in my sort of fever dream was just a fever dream, or anything we see when we hallucinate? Is there a level of reality, even if it's not what we consider base reality, like knock on table reality? Is there a level of reality to all these things that we experience when we're in slightly altered states?
Well, I define reality in terms of that. When we're talking about consciousness now, because we're going to have to start setting some sort of ground rules in terms of talking about consciousness and what that is.
Yeah.
And the best definition I've seen from consciousness is by a chap called Tom Campbell, and he worked with Monroe developing his technology. Tom Campbell was a NASA physicist, and he coined.
He looks a bit like my dad as well.
Yeah, does he? Yeah.
Yeah.
He says that your consciousness is a self-modifying model of reality, basically. So when you explore your consciousness, you are extending and entering your model of reality. It might not be reality itself. It's been influenced by it, and it's been you have sprung from reality, and you have built on this consciousness model. Every time you open your eyes, every time you dream, every time you see or feel something, so you have built this model, and it's exploring it and finding out that model's actually bigger than your understanding of it. So what are these shared things that start to appear in our consciousness, even though we might not have been told about them? And this is where it gets fundamentally to your question.
Yeah.
Around could these archetypal ideas be part of our collective consciousness, something that's entered into us almost naturally, or at least a feature of how we take on reality. Yeah. And there you're at the chicken and egg scenario, where which came first, the consciousness or the reality, or both. I'm a materialist, so I will always say that there is a part of your consciousness that is creative, though, rather than just built on reality.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think it's possible, though, Rich, that some of the things that people experience, like Lee with the gesture, the jester, there,
Easy for you to say.
which I was actually going to say, I don't understand how that has ever been funny. A jester, to me, they look fucking demonic. I think what I'm getting at there is,
and the idea of the trickster has always been a malevolent creature as well, hasn't it?
yeah. You look at a gesture with its little things. That's something that would entertain a baby, not an adult.
Well, the court jester was always somebody that appeared in the court of the king. He was the only person that was allowed to take the mickey out of the king.
Yeah,
and they had their place in terms of a feudal time, where it was almost the jester would breach that royal protocol, and he was the only person that was allowed to do that.
It was to humanize a king as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that we could be seeing something that actually is there? Like, for example, the jester, the little red dots, whatever Dave's seen here, because I know Dave's seen quite a lot of stuff.
No idea
Do
what
you
you're talking about.
Do you, Rich, do you think that it's possible it's not just stuff that is in our brain, and it's stuff that is actually it's there?
I hesitate to say it's one or the other. Do you know what I mean? Because I genuinely think that our consciousness experiences things not straightforward. There's a lot of interpretation that goes on, and I think very often what we might see might not be what we are truly looking at, and we interpret it. So you may have seen something, you may have interpreted it as purple sparkly dots and something like that. So it's the layer of interpretation that you put over it, I think. That's interesting.
See, this drifts in a little bit now towards the sort of stuff we usually talk about on Ollie's channel. I'm a firm believer that we, over the years, it's not the classification when people have seen UFOs. We put it down to the technology at the time and people trying to explain things they don't understand. I think it's the opposite end of that. I think what it is there's something there. There's something invading reality. There's something, be it physical or not, and we're literally manifesting it in a way that we can understand it. So right now we are such a technically advanced civilization. We more understand things as being nuts and bolts things. So that's what we see as nuts and bolts things. Whereas when we were a more spiritual society, we were seeing things in more of a spiritual light, maybe.
Yeah.
Sorry, are you guys familiar with the Philip experiment?
No, what's that?
It was done by some parapsychologists, psychologists, the head of Mensa for Canada. There was an astrophysicist, physicist at a head of a university.
Sorry, Dave. What experiment?
It's called the Philip experiment, and the Philip experiment took place in Canada. What the Philip experiment was these people got together and they wanted to know if the paranormal, ghosts, whatever, are just a collective hallucination. Excuse me, I didn't take my smart pill today. So they came up with a fictitious ghost. They gave him a whole backstory and everything. Like he died in the Civil War. He just came over here from Britain, like where he was born. They had some discrepancies on age, and they all didn't necessarily get on the same board. Then they started having seances and stuff. Nothing happened. Then they changed the lighting, added candles, did things you would expect at a seance. Then they started getting reactions, vibrations, gust of wind, temperature changes. The table tilted on one leg. People were touched. And these are all high IQ people, highly intelligent people, professional people. They're not making things up. And they all went in skeptical, but they all agreed that this is who we're talking to and we will talk to them. And a manifestation occurred who, at the very least, assumed the role of Philip. So when you talk about perceptions and consciousness with perceptions altering reality, I think that's very possible. I think, two people can definitely see the same thing and see different things and be both right.
Mm. There's an interesting folk tale about Captain Cook, who was exploring around some islands in the Pacific.
Yeah, big connection with the Isle of Man, meeting on the Bounty and Captain Cook.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
That's all right. And apparently, what he did was he pulled up in a huge galleon, like he does, and there were people on the shoreline, and they totally ignored this galleon that must have been the first time that they've seen anything like that, certainly in anyone's lifetime. And they pulled right into the bay, and nobody gave it one look. So they got out in a boat, and rowed to shore. And it was only when they got to the shore that these people then tried to attack them and whatever. And there's always been a common folk tale that perhaps the natives did not even register that galleon was actually existing because it was too far out of their perception. And it was only when they got into a small boat and got to the shore that they actually acknowledged their existence.
Wow.
Wow.
It's a bit of a folklore, and it's how you interpret, because it's the journal of somebody that was on the boat itself.
You know, it's interesting that you paint it that way. I've been in situations, even recently, that things outside the realm of normalcy, and we got some of it on film, happens, and the person who's the most skeptical there, they turn around and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come, well, I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. You walked away. We literally told you to, I didn't hear that. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's like, what? It's bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
It was bizarre. It was their non-compliance to deal with something so outside of the realm of what they can accept. You see that a lot in trauma too.
Yeah, I can imagine. So without naming names, this person was just ignorant to it.
No, they saw it going on and they did an about face and walked down a very long hallway.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't see anything. And then nothing happened. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, I mean, it seems a perfectly reasonable thing to believe would happen when you look at people that have had like a history of abuse. Lots of those people will just fucking box that away. I mean, what it does is it generally seems to turn them into a fucking explosion waiting to go off. It's not a good thing to do, but you just package all those bad things that happened of you. You shove them down in the fucking downstairs, and then later on, when someone's like 28 years of age, what fucking Uncle John did was not cool.
Well, that's what PTSD is basically, isn't it? And when people talk about being triggered, you know, you have the very popular stories about
Misgendering pronouns. Yep.
I'm talking about more about people coming back from war. You know, my granddad told me a tale of, sorry, it was my dad that told me a tale about somebody about my granddad, and it's always somebody that knows somebody or something like that. That somebody came back from World War II, and they were having a party to celebrate, and one of the kids jumped on his back, you know, as a sort of welcome, and he basically smashed a glass and attacked the kid with it because he thought he was being attacked. He had a flashback.
Wow.
So these things do happen. People, you know, people compartmentalize stuff. You're absolutely right, and it does burst out again.
That's insane.
I actually know a lot about PTSD.
Do you? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I don't remember my childhood, but it had nothing to do with an Uncle John. It's just not worth remembering. I hope. But,
I did have it, but that's for another.
Oh yeah, no. A lot
podcast.
of dudes I shoot with, they've been to war. A lot of dudes I train with, they've seen horrible things, and yeah. But the craziest thing is, like, I'll talk to these dudes, and it's very PTSD is very specific. So, like, I know guys that, you know, were SF. They did intense things. Sleep like a baby at night. You know what they have nightmares about? Their job in the morning, being late. It's very subjective. Very subjective, the burdens we carry, you know, and how people process and deal with things. I think the military and law enforcement in general could use a major overhaul and some major psych profiling before they let people in. But because not everyone's meant to carry that kind of burden. Anyway, it's a different soapbox. But yeah, man, the mind is a weird thing. The mind is a weird thing.
It is, and that's why Tom's stuff was so profound when he said it's a self-modifying model of reality, and that you are not necessarily completely in charge of that modification process. How you take things on and how you interpret them is for most people quite automatic, and they don't take a step back to look at their thoughts and their feelings and their impressions and all the layers of meaning that they've put themselves onto the world. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, not liking the color brown. How's that destroyed your life? Do you know what I mean? You might have
It's a strange colour for you to pick, Rich. Could have been any colour.
I'm
You
just
went with
looking at
poop.
the bricks on my fireside here. That's all, and they were brown. That's all. Nothing bad.
Tell me why you prefer the white bricks to the brown bricks. It's the same thing. I always say that at any one time you have a single meeting with somebody, or I suppose it would be the same thing, but your life can change with just depending on which people you bump into. You know, like a single conversation or a book that's given to you can completely change your frame of reference from where you are, which essentially, like I mean, I'd always say, I don't know if it certainly didn't change me in the sense of how we're talking here. But I'm a big fan of Douglas Murray, and I remember the first Douglas Murray book I read was The Madness of Crowds. And that changed the way I looked at how we are interacting with each other as people and how the culture wars are starting. And then, you know, and that was one of those things that it probably did lead me, which I'm sure Mr. Murray probably isn't 100% on board with. But I think just that analyzing how people interact with each other led me to be more fucking to the more woo-woo stuff where we are. So it's, you know, it's anything you take in, which you might just think is just, I'll read this book or I'll watch this film, can leave a profound impact on you. And I don't think enough people realize that's going on with them. I always think, especially when we talk about like really out there stuff like this, the crazy thing is that I think people talking about this sort of stuff constantly question themselves, and we constantly ask ourselves, are we talking nonsense? Are we talking about nonsense? Is this fanciful and just fun to speak about? And it's essentially you put headphones on and you're essentially living a little live action role playing game every time you do it. The odd thing is, and I don't think that's what it is, but the odd thing is the rational people that don't think about these things never think that. The rational people never question why they're rational, which is fucking irrational.
Well, the interesting thing for me is not necessarily when I started doing meditation, and this is just straight meditation, no Monroe Institute stuff, because that's what I started, you know, being sort of straight instigating through just traditional Buddhist techniques. And
what were those techniques? Was it more breath work and
just
that?
mindfulness, breath work, that kind of thing, you know, listening to sounds away from you and then closer to and closer to and closer to, and closing yourself in and you know, becoming mindful as yourself rather than an extended person, and all of this good stuff. So what I found though was that the meditation itself, while it's nice, you know, and you're in this nice happy state of disassociation and almost like pressing a reset button on yourself. So you're calm, you're relaxed, etc. But where you really learn is when you stop meditating and you come out of it, and the first thing that annoys you or winds you up or distresses you or anything like that, you sit there and you go, that's distressed me. Why has that distressed me? And that's when you find out that it doesn't distress you. you observe it and you distress yourself.
Mm.
And it's that separation of being able to observe your reactions. So it's not the meditation itself, which is the reset button you hit.
Mm.
It's the things that annoy you or whatever when you go back into normal work that you learn, and you learn to cope with those better. I think
I think one of the things that help as well is it's weird. I'm not very good at meditating at all. No, I'm not good at it. Because it's amazing how insanely, I don't want to say stressful. Stressful is not the word. Almost panic-inducing meditation can be. You know, like when you really try and do nothing, it can be quite strange. You know, I've noticed it myself where I'll be sat doing nothing, and you can feel the tension. You can feel your tension points, especially across the chest and stuff. And it makes me realize just how much we must be being hammered on a minute by minute basis with stress, where it's stressful to just try and be for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you said, Lee, last time we were speaking that, you know, when your electricity goes out, the most.
Oh yeah, I absolutely. I will fucking argue that with anybody. If you turn all the electricity off in your house, sit in the middle point of your house. So you've got, especially like in I live in an old house, so you know the walls between us are huge, thick stone walls. So sit in the middle of your house. Sometimes I'll do it within just outside that door. There is like kind of the center point of my house. I'll turn the trip switch off and sit there, and you can feel the difference. You can feel the stillness. And I don't know if it's like an electromagnetic thing or anything like that. I think it's probably more the like sub. I don't know what the proper word would be. So I'm going to say sub audio, like frequencies that are put out from things. So things that you can't audibly hear, but you're taking in. The small hums, like hums from your fridge. All these little things, like the buzz from your lights that you don't take notice of, but it's definitely there. All of these things, when you take it away, you go, oh shit, we're kind of not supposed to have all this going on around us.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, oh yeah, let's take everything away. Lee just filled his fucking room full of LED lights, so clearly likes a bit of light. I'm not saying we take all this away, but I think it's time we started to realize that we've got so many things around us. There should be more opportunities for people to, like, for want of fucking less cliched terms, unplug.
Absolutely, I agree. And one of the great metaphors for that is going out into the countryside and looking up to the night sky and seeing the Milky Way, which you might not be able to do if you lived in a city or in a town when there's a lot of light. And if you just replace light with sound, yeah, I agree 100%.
It's the same with walking barefoot. I think people should walk barefoot more often as well outside it. There's definitely something grounding about it all. And the weird thing is, I think all this sort of stuff has been marred by like new age hippie nonsense, to be perfectly honest, and it's co-opted in the same way as someone like Stephen Greer has co-opted meditation, you know, and it's been tarnished. So you know, Dave.
Dave's done something to his butt cheek, I think.
Yeah.
I just think I didn't think what I said was that profound.
You said Stephen Greer and he got a shooting pain in his butt.
Yeah.
He's
I've got
got that
shoe-
doll and he's sticking pins in it somewhere, isn't he?
I'm sure I have a host of people doing that to me right now.
I got a shooting
Guaranteed.
pain in my past because I watched that fucking documentary put out. Not
The only
getting
thing,
that.
Lee, with walking out barefoot, in the middle of a field, is a big risk of trying to, treading in shit.
Get it between your toes.
It's good for you.
I hope you enjoyed Daddy Stinky podcast.
You biff. That's the end of the first half of this podcast. I try and leave it on a cliffhanger, but I mean, realistically, getting poo between your toes is not a cliffhanger. Like I forgot to say at the beginning of the podcast, if you would like to help support the podcast and you want these shows in full without having to wait a week in between, I've been pretty backlogged at the minute, so the getting shows out has been a problem, and I have them. Trust me, I have shows for you. They're on my computer, but just the things that have been going on have just made sorting this sort of stuff out a little bit difficult. Hence the reason that people hide on even the Alien Addict stuff as well. However, what I do always make sure to do is I always make sure to keep the Patreon up to date. If you want this show in its entirety, without having to wait a week in between to hear the second part, you can go and sign up to the Patreon for as little as $2 a month. And you get all the stuff I do. You get the Alien Addict stuff put up early. You get the new Musty Audios up early and in full. So I think on average it works out that it's a couple of weeks behind. Musty Audio, like free, is a couple of weeks behind the paid service on Patreon. And that gap will only get bigger as well as I split shows in half and the full ones go up on Patreon. So if you want to stay up to date with Musty Audio, you want to get it in full, not have to wait, go to Musty Audio on Patreon, and that will make everything better, won't it? Please do it. Thanks very much.